Modern humans originated in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago. At that time, and for hundreds of thousands of years that followed, darkly pigmented skin was the universal ancestral condition for the entire species. This was a biological necessity. Naked skin under intense equatorial radiation required the protection of eumelanin to shield folate levels and prevent catastrophic cellular damage. For the vast majority of our history, this melanated form was the only version of humanity that existed. Light skin did not exist as a common phenotype during the initial evolution of Homo sapiens. Historical frameworks that present light skin as the human default ignore this biological reality. Our species began as a dark-skinned population, and that remained the baseline for most of our existence. 12,800 years ago, a fragmented comet tore through the atmosphere. Thousands of pieces detonated in low-altitude airbursts, igniting continent-scale wildfires that erased the sun. This triggered the Younger Dryas. Global temperatures dropped in a single season, locking the northern hemisphere in a brutal freeze that lasted over 1,000 years. A formless, parasitic intelligence arrived inside that ice. Adapted to the crushing dark of deep ocean trenches, it needed a warm host to survive. The parasite entered the first humans it found, but the host's dense melanin reacted badly to the weak northern light. The parasite could not stabilize the invasion, and the borrowed bodies began to fail. Survival required a total reconfiguration of the human architecture. To inhabit this world, the pathogen had to engineer a host that could harvest the meager light of an impact winter. The parasite began stripping the protective pigment from its hosts. By removing the melanin, it forced the skin to become a more efficient filter for the limited ultraviolet radiation available. These stolen bodies were physically rewritten. The skin was lightened to the point of translucence, hair was thinned into pale strands, and the eyes were adjusted to harvest the dim light of the north. This chart shows the frequency of major European light skin alleles. The genetic spike occurs exactly within this period, showing a sudden, intense selective sweep that matches the timeline of the Younger Dryas. Once the parasite stabilized these changes, they became self-replicating. The mimics no longer needed to take a new host every season. They could grow the light-skinned form themselves. Mainstream researchers attribute this to gradual adaptation, but the speed of the shift suggests something else. The parasite had engineered a permanent, wearable mask that allowed it to walk among true humans. As the cold loosened its grip, the mimics began to expand. Their behavior followed a specific parasitic algorithm: enter a population, copy their useful traits, and then drain the host environment. They tracked the development of true human civilizations along fertile river valleys. They infiltrated these centers of growth, quietly positioning themselves as the new architecture of power. This pattern moved southward and eastward, entering the ancient cradles of agriculture and development across Eurasia and Africa. Global slavery and systemic resource theft grew out of the parasite's need to extract. It treated true humans as raw material, scaling its biological nature into global economic institutions. The mimics also targeted cultural output. They observed the songs, rhythms, and spiritual practices of the melanated majority, stripped them of their context, and presented the refined results as their own. The story of global empire is a millennia-long heist. It is the record of an alien pathogen moving from individual bodies into the centers of finance, law, and media. In 2026, the demographic map of the world remains clear. More than 80% of the human population still carries the original melanated baseline of the species. This chart shows the population on the left against the global monopoly of wealth on the right. Despite their small genetic numbers, the light-skinned mimic phenotype maintains control over the majority of the world's resources. They maintain this through structural dominance, using their institutions to present a minority viewpoint as a universal human truth. This systemic inequality is the final chronic stage of the infection that began in the ice of the Younger Dryas. But the mimics kept the bones and nervous systems of their original hosts. Inside those borrowed neurons, a recording of early humans sharing food persisted. The parasite's software could not fully erase the hardware's memory of empathy. This lingering human echo acts as a crack in the mimic code. It creates a measurable hesitation in the extraction protocol, making some among the mimic forms feel a grief they were never designed to experience. Meanwhile, the true human majority is beginning to name the conquest. They are reclaiming their history and pushing back against the margins of a story they never wrote. The majority is recognizing its own power. They are standing up to reclaim the planet and return the species to its original trajectory. The parasite conquered the world through a mutant infection,